One, two, three. Um, okay, I think we're live now. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Curio Community ArtStream number 001. I'm Daniel. I'm here with Max and Travis in his car. So might turn his video on later or not. But we're just gonna go around and introduce ourselves and then kind of kick off this stream. But if you're watching live, definitely ask questions in the live chat, and maybe you can message us and we can send you the link to join and talk too. So let's just introduce ourselves first. Maybe Travis first.
Yeah, hi, thanks. My name is Travis Urick, at Travis for Mayor on Twitter. I'm one of the co-founders of Curio Cards way back in 2017 when we kicked the thing off. Just happy to join and help out with this idea of doing these meetups. I'm have my video off because I'm on tethering off of my phone. I have very poor internet quality right now, but we'll try it. Maybe turn it on later.
Cool. Max?
Hey guys, yeah, I'm Max. I'm also known as Marisol Vengas in the Curio Card set. I've done 27, 28, 29. Yeah, just luck of the draw. Super, super random. Just be part of the Curio Card community. Just really excited. A background in fine art and design. Done lots of other stuff. I run an art studio and design office. Work full time in blockchain for about 3 years now. Heavily involved with NFTs too, professionally. Work with a bunch of projects consulting in the space. One of the bigger ones is Alien Worlds, big blockchain game. Definitely check it out. AlienWorlds.io. And anyway, yeah, glad to be here today. Excited to have conversations about art and curio and the future of all this stuff. So thanks for hosting, Daniel. This is awesome.
Cool. I'm Daniel. I'm a researcher in California. And so it's kind of funny because we're all pretty close to each other in Northern California, actually. So it's just a relatively local meetup. So many questions, where were we then versus now? But maybe because this is just the first stream and probably while some people are joining, but also just a good reference point, can someone, perhaps Travis first, what is Curio Cards? Just how did we get here in 2021?
Yeah, and I'm dropping just an at here mention in the Discord for everybody about the live stream. So everybody is online right now. Yeah, Curio Cards, 2017. We saw a need, like it seemed like a pretty obvious need. Digital artists can't sell their work. No, it's nothing special about a JPEG, nothing special about a PNG file, nothing special about any kind of digital file. Meanwhile, Bitcoin had made a digital thing special. It had made this unique, rare collectible of a Bitcoin that is a digital thing. No different than a JPEG or a PNG in that regard. Just entry in a database, just a bit of text. It had made it unique and special. So we thought, well, let's just jam those together. And we weren't the first people to think of this. People have been trying it out in smaller scale there was a layer 2 Bitcoin, sort of like layer 2 is kind of maybe not the exact right word for it, but it's called Counterparty, and it'll let you kind of build more complex assets on top of Bitcoin. And there was a project called Rare Pepe, and they were trying this really just centered on the Pepe meme though. And we thought, well, let's do this as like a general platform. Let's just do a gallery. Let's do an art show. Let's get a bunch of digital artists together and let them release a rare digital collectible. It's also their artwork. And that's what we did. Nobody, not that many people found it interesting. A few people did. One of our artists, Roback, was like one of our first fans. He just showed up in the Discord and was like, hey, actually the Telegram back then. We don't use Telegram anymore. Daniel, just showed up as well. Max was showed up as well. I think he was a friend of Tom, one of the other co-founders. And fast forward a couple of years, and now this whole giant ecosystem exists called NFTs. And Curio Cards is the first example of it in the art form on the Ethereum blockchain.
Nice
Catch the
summary.
base.
Nice summary. I guess that's sort of the top overview. There's sort of the multiple years of quiescence and then the
Yeah.
the rediscovery. Maybe could you summarize some of that, and then maybe Max and I can give our take because we probably re-entered the thread differently as well.
Yeah, that's sort of the like everything went great and we all lived happily ever after version of the story. The more nuanced version is in 2017. We're hitting our heads against the wall over and over and over again, trying to explain to people just what an NFT is in the first place, let alone why Curio Cards specifically was a good NFT. I'd go talk to people, I'd do interviews, podcasts, we'd like talk, and the whole thing would be about the why do I care about having this image? Why, anybody can copy it, anybody can look at it. So the vast majority of conversations around that. Fast forward a couple of years, NFTs are, Saturday Night Live skit about NFTs, right? I don't know if it's like a household name exactly, but it seems like everyone knows that term, even if they don't know what an NFT is. They've all heard the term. And now when we talk about this stuff, we don't have to explain what it is as much. There's still a lot of people out there that we need to explain what it is, but there's this huge ecosystem. So people who care about NFTs a lot, they go hunting, they go looking for the earliest examples. This happened after a project called Mooncat was discovered, and people realized there are things older than CryptoPunks. There are things older than what we thought was the oldest. So they went hunting, and they found Curio Cards. It's interesting that reverse validation was required. People had to go look for the first thing and find Curio Cards for people to really in a large quantity rediscover Curio Cards. Because we had been coming from the other angle. We had been saying for quite some time, hey, Curio Cards is older than Punks. Curio Cards is potentially the first. I'd say potentially because I hadn't had that confirmation. So having people come out from the other end was really important. And they independently discovered Curio Cards. They got their hands on some of them. And we then had to give a working product to this whole new ecosystem of people. And that involved being on OpenSea. Curio Cards is older than OpenSea. It did not work on OpenSea. So the rediscovery process, a large chunk of it revolved around creating a way of integrating Curio Cards into OpenSea. So that's been accomplished. We have a whole new community now. There's like 6,000 people on the Discord. There's over 4,000 card holders. And it's one of like the top 22 last time I checked in terms of total volume traded on OpenSea ever. So it's been a hell of a ride.
Okay, so just as a reminder, since someone asked, that was Travis speaking. I'm Daniel, and just on the rediscovery theme, Max, go for it, and then I'll go too.
Oh man, yeah, rediscovery was pretty bizarre for me. And I just want to mention the Marisol Vengas name, just what that is. It was I've done a lot of community engagement art projects, in which I get a lot of people together to hang out, to work on some type of art activity, kind of bridging the gap between like, what high-end art is and what low-end art is, basically like hanging out, doing some tasks, chilling. So a lot of the early Marisol Vengas art shows under one of my aliases was, to have a bunch of friends together. We would produce these works of art, and then we would, I'd show them around, and I would get pretty bizarre messages, like, because they're like, even friends of our friends wouldn't know that it was under, it was an alias, and they just assumed it was an actual female that had produced the work. And so I got these creepy messages back in the day. Like, and it turns out they were like actual people in the community that were like trusted. And so I get these unusual messages like, oh, I love your art. Like, I wrote you a poem. And I'm like, this is weird. I've never gotten a poem under, Max Infeld art or, so anyway, so I'm used to getting strange messages, but only when I was having these shows, like after the show, during the show, like, just want to, thank you for your art. And I'm like, okay, well, anyway, used to it. And I was looking back because I'm like, when did these strange messages start back up? And March 14th, I started getting messages again. Strange messages like, do you have any cards? And I'm like, what cards? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm thinking it's like spam or some new Facebook scammers or something like that. But anyway, so I would say that's when the rediscovery started. I started getting strange messages. Do you have any cards? Do you have any NFTs? And I'm like, this is like strange. then I got a message from Adam McBride. He's like, can I interview you about this old project, Curio Cards? And I'm like why? Like, why would anyone care about this? Like, it it didn't go anywhere. Like, as far as I know, there's still like cards for sale in this in these vending machines. And anyway, I didn't even make the connection really that it was like those were like the OG NFTs, or and like, and I've been working in NFT space like for a while now. Like, I've minted some of the first NFTs on Wax as well, and yeah, just really bizarre to see that kind of, yeah, that a connection there. I'm like, whoa, these are actually be considered NFTs. That was a shock, and I'm like, wow, the implications of this are pretty vast. And anyway, since March, we've been, had a lot of major events happen, and yeah, just really overwhelming. And I don't think I've processed it fully what the implications of that are. But anyway, yeah, been at Christie's and now Sotheby's in the same month is extremely rare for any artist. And anyway, yeah, now we're here today, and it's super weird.
Thanks, Max. I have a lot of questions about the art specifically, but just to kind of complete the answer. So it was 2017, and as said elsewhere, just filled out a Google form, looked through the Google form, looked for that in my email and stuff. Can't quite find where I encountered this form, but connected with Travis and the rest and just included the art. My art was always sort of either individual drawing or drawing in groups. So it ended up being kind of a cool resonance with Max and a lot of the other artists who work kind of in feedback or in a collaborative way. So did drawing, submitted art, didn't really hear back too much, but just was interested in crypto and learning about that whole space during that time, and didn't really think about it. Sent it a few more reminder emails to the team. Seemed just like it was one of the many projects that in crypto went quiet. And then also got a few emails asking about if I had cards, which I didn't before any of this. And then someone got me in contact with Adam, who basically slid me onto his podcast and kind of informed me in real time. And that was only a few months ago. And then it was really only in July 2021 that the increased amount of activity began. And yes, to have Christie's on October 1st, and then basically Sotheby's ongoing. Pretty interesting spot. So, okay, if I can ask a first question, Max, which cards did you make the art or be associated with the art for? And what is just the physicality of the art?
So, yeah, so the cards 27, 28, 29, those are representative of physical artworks, which I have tracked down the originals, and I have those in my possession. And what's interesting, Daniel, we should talk about your originals too, but yeah, you have originals out of the whole set. I think there's 6 original artworks that are represented as NFTs in the Curio Card collection. And those come from a larger set of artworks, and that was Series 6, which happened to be the last set of Marisol Vengus. So on average, I was doing 1 to 2 shows a year where we'd make these from start to finish. The process of these was, I would say it's an algorithm, and I acted more of like the stage director versus like saying like, it has to be like this. This is my art. This is the art that I produced that's on the wall. It was more, just finding images, tweaking the images, in some cases coloring them in, stacking up layers, making compositions. And I took a lot of this stuff that I learned in art school, and someone did the opposite. So in art school, they're like, you want it to last forever because this is a really important, you don't know what will happen to it, but you want to preserve it and you want to keep it, So they were teaching us these things in printmaking, like make it out of like cotton paper and like make it out of inks that don't have acid in them, and like you learn all these kind of rules that have been coming from this long lineage of preserving art a certain way. And these original pieces, a lot of people in the community have sent them to and gifted them in different ways, and sold a lot of them. They'll see them and they're not necessarily of the highest quality materials. And that's because I literally did the opposite with this series from what I learned from my education. I made things that were like accessible and, with what people in my community had, yeah, there's all this speculation as an artist you're supposed to have, like you're supposed to invest in and with printmaking, invest in these like copper plates and invest in these really high-end tools. And I'm like, oh man, this is a lot. Like I don't really have the bandwidth or resources for this. So anyway, that's what those original pieces come from this very accessible process, using things I could find. I found a laser printer, I found toner, I found foam core like on sale at Walmart, and I found this acetate. I think the acetate that I used on those original Marisol pieces were literally like $10 for like 10,000 sheet, like something insane. I just had to pay a little extra shipping for it. So anyway, yeah, that's where those original artworks come from. And but yeah, I'd love to hear also about your physical pieces, and yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'll go for mine, and then we can kind of recap some of the other styles too, because that's one of the most interesting things is really the selection across different styles of art from just people who couldn't recreate each other's art. That's kind of the purpose of an art show, that it just makes a bigger piece. So within the artist, they can make like the diptych with two next to each other, but then there's other kinds of stories, as we've kind of seen arising when you actually juxtapose in a different way, which is why the kind of composition is art as well. So I did the art for 24, 25, and 26, and they are ink drawings on paper, just regular, like probably 8.5 by 11 or 9 by 12 paper. Would have to check, but they're all just physical pieces of paper that we have. And are ours actually the only previously physical ones, and the other ones might all be digital?
Yep. Yeah, it was really important to us. It was really important to me that we demonstrated a lot of different mediums and methods to show that NFTs can be so many different things. That's why we have such a wide range of styles. And towards I would say the end of the project, but after we'd done a couple of them, I was thinking like the thing we're really missing here is, even though this is all about digital artwork, there also can be a physical element. You can take something in the real world and digitize it, and that can be an NFT. And I really wanted to demonstrate that. So when Daniel's artwork showed up, it was like, boom, there it is. And then Tom was like, I know somebody, and boom, there it was. I also just love the juxtaposition of neither of you made any kind of special effort to use like long-term materials, with special paints and papers. So their art has that ephemeral nature, juxtaposed against the fact that the NFT version of it is forever, as best we can understand, right? It's hosted decentralized on IPFS. It was the first project, NFT project to use IPFS. There's a lot of nodes. The data is available to anybody. It's anchored on Ethereum. It's the thing that I would tell people 2017, the line I like to use was, Curio cards are always mint condition. Just to kind of like show their advantages to digital. People were telling me about the advantages of physical collectibles over digital. I was like, but their advantages to digital, one of the advantages is that the art is perfect forever. I find it really interesting that both of your artworks, the physical versions, say no special effort to be archivable.
Oh yeah. I actually thought about that too. Just from looking at Daniel's other pieces on Flickr, there's a ton of them. I can tell he's not using artist materials, and that's very it's bizarrely similar to the ones I selected as well. Like, because I have a background in fine art. Like I have a BFA in fine art. It's really odd that I don't even know what I was thinking. I'm like, why didn't I pick a fine art series for that? I mean, there are some themes in here, that are used in fine art as well. But yeah, the materials that'll be interesting. I think when these art historians look into this further, they're gonna pull out some interesting interesting parallels there.
Well, to kind of comment on the drawing and then also about this bringing the physical, because even the NFT that rightfully and importantly precede in many different chains, Curio Card as a project, 2017, that question of connecting to the real world is like always central. And it's easy to spin up a purely on-chain world, like a little program. But then it's actually this interface of meaning that is where art leads the way, with the on-chain having, and finance and other areas too. So that's just kind of interesting. And then it is kind of a cool coincidence that we have Travis, one of the co-founders, and then kind of these two physical sides, because one other way to look at it was like the physical art was created during a process that wasn't digital per se. And then it's like an NFT can be created with no extra effort, just scanning a drawing, and then that part of the art is done. So it's more like documenting or archiving, but then doing it in a way that was also connected to kind of, on one hand, crypto and open source and all this other cool stuff, but then also just new financial and then ultimately social ecosystems for artists, because that's what it's turned out to be. I remember there was like a tip splitting add-on, or probably several platforms that tried things like this. And I mean, the reality is I didn't sell art or receive any donations via Flickr. Just even having thousands of people look at art sometimes is not enough to convert that to too much. And there's so many niche kinds of art that could be really important for a smaller group of people. So then just, I guess that's kind of what this whole crazy thing is about.
There's something that's so fascinating to me about Daniel's involvement, because I'm like, where did he see the link? Where did that come up? Because all of us have been involved in like crypto communities. I've known Tom for 20 years, like 20 years, or maybe even a little more than that. And so I thought that was, there. Anyway, I'm saying it makes sense how we got.
If I were to guess, I figure it has something to do with your interest in like decentralization and like chaos. Like, I find it really interesting the angle in which you might have come from at this, Daniel.
Well, at that time, I was in grad school in Palo Alto at Stanford, and I was learning about crypto. There was a lot of people doing computational law and identity, which was not and am not an expert in, but just seeing how that was kind of playing out and how people were applying theory and practice, that was like interesting enough. And then just thought, okay, skin in the game financially from a time perspective, and then just from getting information from new and different sources. So I don't know, maybe look back at those form submissions, see what places you circulated it.
Yeah, we put it on the this is actually really funny, Bitcoin Talk forum back in the day. I say back in the day, like, we're all old timers, like, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Back in the day, if you weren't on Bitcoin Talk, you weren't a real project. You couldn't launch no self-respecting project would launch and not put a post in Bitcoin Talk forum. It was a requirement. Now nobody cares. Nobody knows what it is. So we posted about Curio Cards on the Bitcoin Talk forum, and it's actually really fun to go back and read the replies, because like most of them are people thinking it's an ICO or something. They just don't get it. It's like, oh, there's an Apple coin. I'm like, no, it's art. It's a card. And they think like, how many apples do I need to get into like, the ICO or something?
And one of the I remember,
I'm sure we dropped the forum in that as well, and that was a very popular site. Maybe you found it through there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably where it was for sure. I remember when I was asked for my participation. It was like, oh, I remember like Tom calling me up and be like, do you have art? And I'm like, of course I have art, dude. Like, what do you think? Like, it was just, it seemed kind of just casual. Like, I didn't realize it was like there was a bigger project and vision around it. Like, I'm like, okay, so, and then I'm like, wait a second, this is some crypto shit. Like, I'm used to like being in the cafe with people and someone talks about it, and I'm like let's go outside, you know, like discreet, like, because that's, I remember there was a point where a lot of friends who were utilizing the technology were doing it very, very privately, you know, in the early days. And so I'm like, well, of course I'm going to use one of my aliases. Like, that was one of the reasons why it was Marisol, because I'm like, this is a huge liability to friends and family. Like, I don't want anyone knowing about this. And I think a lot, you know, a lot of those people that, you know, that was a concern for a lot of other people too. So, um, um, yeah,
Yeah, crypto was
it
weird
was
back then.
interesting. Yeah,
Nobody
super
really knew what it
strange.
was for, right? Like nobody knew what it was for. Nobody knew what crypto was for back then. We didn't have DeFi. We didn't have NFTs. The use cases honestly didn't exist. It was just, hey, it's like gold, but it's digital, and that was really the only use case that existed. So it was a very weird space. And to a lot of people still that don't know about the use cases, right, that exist now and the use cases that we envision existing, it is still a very weird space.
So it reminds me of, since you mentioned kind of gold, like, and we're in California with the history of gold bringing people, but also there being pre-existing ecology and people. So that's kind of, at the very least, a parallel in that sort of hinged on gold. So then just one point was like, why I used my real name, because my feeling then and still basically now is, if something is just done by one person, then I feel okay with putting my name on it. But then the things that involve collaboration, it's just best to have no author list, or just a ranked through a different way of contribution, because these collective projects are just so vast. Crypto and Curio even, and art, and the community that supports artists in just so many levels, that it's kind of like this, I agree, this interesting blend,
Mm-hmm.
because so many crypto projects do rely on people who are using different identities. And that's kind of part of the beauty of our space and of art, where knowing the artist and exalting the artist is like one of many social psychologies around art, as evidenced by just world cultures and history.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was
absolutely.
going to say, Daniel, I think you're the only person that used your real name in the project out of seven of us, right? I thought that was pretty interesting, and like pretty rare back then. It seems like we're talking about this like this is like 50 years ago. I mean, this was just a few years ago, or almost 5 years ago. But yeah, I think it's
Lots
just,
changed.
yeah, a lot has changed, and like, and I decided to oust myself, or dox myself as they call it now. But I decided to do that when I came into Discord, and I'm like, it was like community Discord. It wasn't the one that we're using now. There was just some random pop up. I remember when I touched base with you, I was like, this is getting pretty crazy. And you're like, someone made a Discord, and I'm like, what? Like, no way. I get in there. There's already like
Yeah,
400. There's like 400 people in there, and I'm like, hey
yeah. They didn't
guys,
know about the Discord that already existed, so they had set up another one even, just spontaneously, like spontaneous community organizing.
yeah, that was bizarre in its own right. And like, I'm like, well, I show up and I'm like, hey, it's me, Marisol. They're like, what? What are you talking about? You're crazy. Like, there's already, Marisol's already here, but we're giving her cards. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Like, no, like, I'm, I'm the real one. Like, ask, I think you were there. I don't think Tom was engaged very much there, but
Yeah, I
I,
think I think I was verifying the artist at that point.
yeah, so you verified and you're like, yes, this is him. And then I linked to my Facebook, and there's like literally only like 50 followers on the Facebook page at the time. But then I'm like, oh no, I have to like use my real name. And it's more just to, you know, I really wanted, it was important to me to associate the, you know, I realized like, man, like this is on chain, but I never put my real name on chain with the artwork. And then shortly after, I issued the rest of the images I had from that set on the Wax blockchain, and then tied it to the Facebook, which I made sure that I'm like, had a little more, you could say, ownership over Marisol's identity. And oh man, that was
Yeah,
scary. I'm
it's
like,
like proof of art, right? Like you're proving your identity through your art. You're like, oh, this other person, they may say they're Marisol, but I got another 15 pieces of artwork in the same series that nobody else has. Like that's proof of art. That's how you verified your identity, was with having the full series of art.
exactly. And then I probably wouldn't have used my real name unless Daniel was using his. So I'm like, oh, fuck it.
Well, I love that. I
roll
love
with it.
that. And that was something that was also important to us too, is you're like, you can do this. So much of the traditional art world is who you know and the opportunities you have, where you do your art at. And we thought it'd be really cool to show the same way the internet has broke down all these barriers for where you are and what you can learn. It can also break down those barriers for artists. You can be an artist who lives somewhere the traditional art world doesn't see. Luis talks about this as well. CryptoPop. He was the first, Filipino artist to go to Christie's, New York City. It's just like, it just wasn't, the traditional art world wasn't in all these places. So it was actually really important and kind of cool that our artists were anonymous. It was up to the artist, but like the first artist is, the first like artist cards were Crypto Graffiti, which were, he's anonymous. The first cards were created by Philippe, he's anonymous. I don't even know who Philippe is. I had no idea who Marisol was, who you were, but we had never spoken, we had never met. And yeah, obviously there are anonymous arts in the traditional art world like Banksy, but it was an important component that digital can bring, an important component that the internet can bring, was going by your online identity.
Okay, very interesting. Let me ask one kind of technical question. 2017, what was easy because of the ERC20 and the kind of situation at the time was ICOs and so-called altcoins. So what kind of technology was used to generate Curio? Like, where are the images? What is the relationship with ERC20? And then what's the relationship with today's conception, the SNL tier NFT?
So the hero of the story on this part of in this chapter is Rhett. So Rhett Creighton, he was another co-founder, and me, Tom, and Rhett, we all got together and thought like, hey, this is a really cool idea. It totally makes sense to us logically. And Rhett was like the one who said, I know how to make this. I know how to build this. The NFT standards that people use today, there's sort of two main ones. There's something called ERC 721, which is the most NFTs are this standard. And then there's ERC 1155, which is more like prints and collectible cards. And Curio is now of this standard, but it didn't exist at the time. So what did exist was ERC 20. ERC just means like Ethereum request for comment. It's just like it's a standardization thing, and the 20 is just the number picked by the author. I think there's some sort of, they have to get larger or something. So ERC 20 existed, and ERC 20 is just your standard token contract. It's so it's very easy to make these. So people would make them and say, hey, if you buy these, we'll sell them, and you give us money, ETH. We will use all that ETH to create a company, and the tokens we just gave you will have some kind of promise of return. And that was the ICO. It was a promise. And we looked at these art assets and thought, well, this is great because there's no promise required. When you get the token, you just got the thing you bought. You pay $1, here's a piece of art. Transaction done. We're done here. And so yeah, so how do we do that? So Rhett took an ERC20 contract as a starting point, and he modified it because ERC20 does not support this kind of behavior. ERC20 is divisible, and they're not unique, they're not special, etc. So he forked the ERC20 contract, made a bunch of changes. I think there was somebody else as well who was helping out at the time with like ideas and stuff. I don't recall their name off the top of my head, but it was Rhett. And then Rhett added some extra features. So first of all, they're not divisible. He also added something we called it a vending machine. He called it a vending machine. Today, the modern version of vending machine would be minting. So when you go and you mint an NFT, it's when you send money to the contract, and it gives you art back. What we did is we created as vending machines, and we'd actually create all the art up front and then load it into the vending machine. And then it's just what you expect. You give it money, art falls out the bottom, just like a vending machine. The other thing that we did to associate the art with the token, because these are like trading cards, they're like prints, was embed in the series an IPFS hash. This seemed pretty obvious to us at the time. IPFS was this new thing that just come out. It was a way of doing decentralized file storage. Essentially what it means is anybody can host the data. It doesn't have to exist at a certain place. Like when you go on the internet and you go, Google / whatever, that is a location. You're searching by location. With IPFS, you search by file. The hash is just a fingerprint of the file. And if anybody has that file anywhere on the network, you can find it by its fingerprint. So it's decentralized storage. So we put an IPFS hash inside of each of the tokens to represent that connection. And a lot of these things ended up in the ERC 721 standard. And Curio is referenced in the standard. It's cited, in at the bottom as one of the projects that they looked at. In the text of the body, they also call out Curio, explaining the ways in which ERC 721 is different from Curio Cards. So Curio Cards, we were going for the print model. We did this because we had done an art show the year before, a physical art show, and prints had sold the best. And prints seemed like a really great way of getting a lot of people exposed to like similar artwork. 721, they got rid of the print model. There's only one of each. That was a very important change. That's 721. ERC 1155 came out later, and it references 721, and they essentially put the thing back in that was Curio Cards. They put the thing back in that 721 called us out for and removed, and that was the ability to make many pieces of artwork be in the same series. So like a trading card, like I have a Pokemon card, you have a Pokemon card, but they're still unique and rare because there's only a set number of them. But the Pokemon cards themselves are the same. And that was what 1155 added back in. So when we upgraded Curio to be on OpenSea, we wrapped it in the 1155 standard.
Okay, super interesting. Because
there's a lot there.
Yeah, there is, but it's kind of like that's what's amazing and just starting to be understood is all the ways that we could design. Like, I want person A to speak to only A, B, and C, and this person C can spend this money, but not unless this happens. Just that kind of conversation is going to be reflected by some computational structure. So all these new ways of being like, what if there was a file and no one had to know what it said exactly?
And I really like,
but yeah, good.
Yeah, I really like what 1155 did because I feel like it put that flexibility back in. 721 was, I think, a necessary contract to exist to kind of like explain the, one version of NFT. But if you think of NFTs as digital art, it's a digital collectible. There's much larger space than just a one of one. You want that design space to be big and rich and flexible so that artists and collectible makers and game makers can express themselves, right? And try many different things. So I really like 1155 because it put that flexibility back in that 721 removed. And it's just really cool to see that become a more and more supported NFT standard.
Yeah, I just want to talk about just briefly. I had so many friends that had done crypto art, like one-offs, like putting stuff on Bitcoin, one-offs on Ethereum, like really early on. But when they would link to an image that doesn't exist anywhere, they'd be using some generic image hosting site that isn't there anymore. So all that work is gone. So they were clever enough to put it on the blockchain, and you can look at the stuff in the blocks, but when you actually look at like the link they put, it's not there. So the huge advancement of using the actual IPFS
that happened with
profound.
I think that happened with a lot of projects early on. Any project before us, right? Because we're the first ones to use IPFS. Any project that involved off-chain data, I've even seen projects where they get it so close, they'll use the IPFS hash, but they'll embed in the token a gateway address. So it'll be website, .com/thing/IPFS, and then the hash. And yeah, the hash is there, and the hash is decentralized, unique, but that gateway isn't. That gateway is a specific website run by a specific server by a specific company, and that can go down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had friends mint on BitShares, unique tokens, and also on Counterparty, and in both cases they have definitely lost the images associated with them, and it's just like,
Hmm.
oh no. But I think some of those, like, it doesn't matter, like the rare peppies, for example, like it doesn't really matter. It's like the token is issued, and on a centralized site they're like, oh yeah, this is the
Yeah.
image. It's There's a consensus around it. And I we'll see purists, and we'll see certain institutions say, oh, we want this authentic, very authentic one. But it's like,
Yeah.
well, those are just as authentic as well. There's if they allow it on the website, when it pulls the data into this other system, it's like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
And there's always room for like a more pure version of something. So I'm certainly not a purist either. I support experimentation and trying things. Rare Pepe did what they could do with the technology available to them at the time. IPFS, I don't think, was out when they first launched. And now, through its popularity, they have this opportunity to take, you know, the agreed upon art, all the art that is the consensus that this is the art, something like IPFS as a group, as a collective to adopt newer features. I mean, that's what happened with the. It's like this is the Curio card. It's like the original one is still in there. It's not made out of thin air. It's wrapped in the original one. It's wrapped up inside of it, but it's still this new token address, this new address that the consensus says because the token is in it. It is a legitimate, link.
Yeah, I love what they've done with the emblem .finance tool to wrap those up. At first, it was like, this is sketchy, like no one's going to use this, and then it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
actually, this is really well thought out, and they did a good job at it. Definitely, yeah, I'd check out how they did that if whoever's listening hasn't seen it yet. But yeah, I mean, theoretically, you could take any of these older chain assets and wrap it up with their system and put it onto
As long as
Ethereum.
it had a unique, identifiable system of ownership that the users were in control of, and then you can essentially mine deep history, right? You can find these moments in history where a unique, identifiable asset existed, and subscribe new value to it. Um, you can take like old ICO tokens. This was actually a project that Robeck, one of the artists, and Moon, a developer who works with Curio, 2017 and now, they had this project they were working on at the time where you could take ICO tokens and give them powers in a game because the tokens had no value anymore. They were like these dumb tokens, but they had value in that they had unique ownership controlled by the users and they're distributed on the network. And you could just, at any point, an artist, a creator can look at some old asset from that has some sort of historical bit of note and say, this does this now.
Okay.
And that's
So
what the wrapper is. It says this now works on OpenSea.
okay, that went one way into kind of the technical. That's what the technical was in 2017. That's 2021. There's people beyond us maybe listening to it. Maybe they'll come on a future discussion who know more on like the future another time. But let's go into one of the topics that you wanted to talk about, Max. Like we have the technical side and then we have the human side with the engagement. So what were you thinking about with the future of engagement with NFTs?
Oh man, yeah, it's such a broad and general topic, and we see all types of engagement on different blockchains. We see the there's almost something simple and elegant about being part of a community by buying in and getting a profile picture. Or I stumble across people that have used my Marisol pieces for the profile picture. I'm like, no way, like how cool is, I mean, same with you, Daniel. I'm like, oh, is that Daniel? It's like, oh no, that's just someone that acquired it and they want the status, or they like the image, or whatever reason. They can, there's this engagement through association, which I think is awesome. And then you look at Alien Worlds, who I consult with, and how NFTs are being used for massive levels of engagement. Hundreds of thousands of daily users in some cases, and over, I think they use over like 10 million, 11 million NFTs in the game. So there's a massive level of engagement that it's almost like disparate though. It's separate from the value layers of engagement. I think just my greater question is, what does this look like when gas fees are negligible, like on the Wax blockchain, or very, very low, or someone else can cover your gas fees? What type of engagement occurs? Um, is there a richer form of what that looks like? What should we look forward to? Should we start architecting these things now? Should we, bridge the gaps to tools that can do this? Like, do communities want that? Do they even care? Do people just want to keep, have the end game just getting more dollars in their bank account? Do they want to just see Ether number go up? I mean, what's the end game for the individuals that are holding these things? I'm particularly, I'm really interested more in like how these can be used to enrich communities. We've seen a little bit of engagement in the Discord, like you hold these things, you can get into this club. That's awesome. Like get into this private party. Yeah, but just taking that further, where does that end up? How does that help people? How does that enrich these communities? So yeah, I'm just curious what you guys think about that.
Travis, want to go for it? That's super interesting, though.
Yeah. If I were off the top of my head, I could see like 3 categories. It's probably more, but the 3 sort of areas off the top of my head would be access, which is what Max just mentioned. You have NFTs, you have special access, either special access to the artist, special access to new NFTs, special access to chat rooms and Discord channels. There's another group, topic area could be financial services. I could see a lot of financial services around NFTs because it's, and also on access, being involved in governance. People have been voting with, tokens for a while. There's a lot of really interesting things you could do with NFTs and governance around, like, if you have this NFT, you have a certain kind of role or office, you're on a certain kind of panel or group, etc. So that's access. Anyway, financial services. The traditional art world has this as well. If you want to use your painting as collateral, if you want to, just have different ways of accessing its value, different ways of sharing its value, we can take that and we can even toss in all the crazy degenerate stuff that people do in DeFi and apply it around NFTs. And you see a little bit of example of this as well. There's, I think it's called NiftyFi or something, where you can use your NFT as collateral to take a loan out. And we'll see more and more of those, as well as fractionalization to share ownership of a rare piece as a group, or even just holding that piece in a multi-sig as a group. I would put that all in kind of like financial services sector. The third one area would be games. We are talking with Curio Cards, it's their art NFTs. And not to say they couldn't use games as well, but there are other projects like, Loot, etc., where it's like, this is a sword, this is a shield, this is armor. There are specifically game elements. Or there's Ethereum, which is an even older NFT project. They did game tiles. And I think like all of these sectors are going to be absolutely enormous, to the point where what the NFTs are now are not the thing. When people talk about NFTs, we're not selling the complete idea. If you look at NFTs and say like, I don't know, that doesn't seem like enough to care about, you're right. It's not there yet. What we have right now is we have the asset, we have the item, we have the element, the art itself, the token itself. What we don't have yet is what we do with them. It's the same situation as Bitcoin was back in the day. We had Bitcoin, but we didn't have any of the use cases yet. We didn't have DeFi, we didn't have NFTs, we didn't have all the things you do with it. When in the future, when we're using these as elements inside of games, or they're used to back up entire financial sectors, I think it's going to look kind of cute, what NFTs were today.
Can I ask a question? Curio News asked if there were any games being created that give utility. So first off, it's just interesting, like games and utility. So there's a lot to actually say about where games do have utility and beyond social and development and everything on that side, but just like serious games, even war gaming. There's so many ways in which gaming does have utility. But then I'm just kind of curious, as someone who doesn't play a lot of games in this sort of crypto space, what does that mean, or what does it even look like for like Curio specifically? rather than a game designer to
Mhm.
implement their own non-fungible token, what would it mean for Curio to play a role in that? Like, how do we go from MetaMask with the Curio to something different in the game?
So games are held back right now by technology. There are chains that have a very different relationship with games. Like obviously, Max was mentioning Wax, people doing games on Polygon, Phantom, etc. Games that have different relationships with fees. Um, Games are more viable there, but it's still just a very new space. And for the most part, where most of the users are, most of the NFTs are, it's still restricted by technology. When I think of a game NFT asset, and this relates to Curio, because either the game makes its own NFTs or they use NFTs that already exist. So we would be in the use NFTs that already exist category. And what Curio would bring would be the uniqueness of the asset, right? In fact, it's old, right? Like its age. An Apple card would be a powerful talisman. It'd be a powerful object because you know, wow, that's an old card. That's hard to get. These are rare. These are special. So a game that were to try to integrate Curio cards, that would be the goal. It'd be like you kind of, I imagine they'd be, you could bring many different NFTs from many different projects, and Curio would be one of the many kinds of special objects you could get. And what they'd be saying is our game is special because
That's like,
Travis, you
our
cut
game is
out. You said
special. I mean, it's funny.
because
Let me try to complete it because it's really, oh, go ahead, Travis.
we are also a game that's just Curio.
Okay. I think,
Am I back?
yeah, I think you're back.
yeah,
All right.
The coolness of the game would be
Well, I don't know where you lost me exactly.
just like the coolness of the game that brought together.
Yeah, something like a game that used. Yeah, like they're sort of saying we are special, because we respect the specialness of these other things that people have. It's a game that says if you have a rare, old, unique, powerful thing, you can bring it here, and we will give it rare, unique power.
And
it's that idea of like that found object,
also to connect with the real world. Like, I didn't play Pokemon Go or other AR kind of augmented reality games, but there's clearly a lot of gray zone between the recommendation algorithms that people think are not a game, even when points are involved, all the way up to the explicitly game-like ways that are going to be increasingly changing people's like day-to-day movement and decisions. So then to connect that, and again, using art to bridge scarcity, meaning, value, sort of a mystery, even. Haven't people been asking about the sales price of art forever? So all these questions are just being transposed into a new, but really structurally different context.
The ecosystem the new art is in, the ecosystem the NFT art is in, is a more flexible ecosystem, because someone as a developer could be like, hey, I have an idea for a game or a product or whatever, and I think that all these different NFT projects deserve a spot in that universe. They're relevant to it. They're related to it. I can make something that uses these in it, and I could be like, because these people have these rare objects, when they show up, it represents something. It means something. You can't really do that with traditional art world. You can't say like, I'm going to make a game where if you have this painting at home, you are special in the game.
Yeah, I think we have this concept of the metaverse or multiverse, and anything's possible. There's no guardrails, right? Like it's amazing that anyone can tap into these different community stores of value, and that's what's happening. A game can reinterpret what the Curio NFT looks like. It could actually just be an apple in the game, right? It doesn't. It's just,
Yep.
You have what the user sees.
Bring their own metadata.
Exactly. They can create their own metadata. They can fractionalize it. They can, make these as like the main game reward. There's so many things to go down. I'm focused on a lot of the problems because I'm actually trying to utilize these cross chain, and there's some crazy problems to solve. Like one of the main ones is like, how do you bridge these chains in a decentralized way that you don't have like centralized points of failure? Because when you do scale these up to these hundreds of thousands of users that we're dealing with in some of these games I mentioned, there's major complications there. And what, like, who's at fault
Yeah,
when they
there's different
lose?
ways you can go, right?
Yeah.
You could bridge. Oh, sorry. I think I'm having some lag. I didn't mean to talk over
Oh
you.
no. Go ahead.
Because you can bridge, but you also can roll up. Is the term, right? You could have a different chain, another L1 that's just structured differently to allow lots of fast transactions. There's also the push for an L2, and all the chains are going to have their own LTs as well. So then there's bridging between chains, but there's also just going up a layer, right? And I personally am a lot more optimistic about the L2 approach, just because you kind of keep everyone in the same ecosystem a lot easier. But these things just they don't really exist yet, so we have to see how it plays out.
Yeah,
Pretty, yeah.
there's so many fun things to talk about and figure out there. I mean,
Yeah. I love that idea of an Apple card can just be an Apple. That's absolutely true. You can invent
yeah,
your own metadata. You could take an Apple card. They're rare. There's like 900 of them that are known active. Right? There are 1,800 at the time, but like half of them are in zombie wallets or something. Um, but you could take one and say, we're going to fractionalize this to 1 million, and this is now the food in a game.
You know what?
yeah. I would suspect we would have some of these games in a very short time. I'm not sure when, but in the next months to year. I mean, we see these these DApps that you can integrate a custom community token into pretty easily, and I would suspect that there'll be some games that follow that same pattern. What's the service NFTX where you could deposit curios and get interest off them for the floor
Yeah,
trades. And
yeah, and yeah, FTX is really cool. There's a coin now. You can just buy a Curio, like a Curio card. The cheapest one's a couple $1,000s. But what if you want to just put $500 into Curio? NFTX, you deposit cards of same value, so it's floor cards. There's like 4 or 5 different Curio cards that are like represent. They're the cheapest, most common cards, so the floor ones. If you deposit them into this pool, you get one Curio coin out, and it's a regular ERC20. And then people LP it, and it's on Sushi Swap. So you could go and just buy like $500 worth of Curio and just hold it like a coin, and that coin will track the value of the Curio Cards floor. And that's kind of in that financial services category, right? But it also could be used for like in-game currency. I think I don't know of anything off the top of my head, to be clear, like anyone who's doing this. But I think the first game that creates something really compelling and interesting that leans on all these existing communities, like says, yeah, bring your NFTs, show up with your own NFTs. I think it'll be a really powerful form of community gathering and building. Right now, most games, they make their own NFTs, and I think it should do that as well. But I think of like Ready Player One, like that game world that Halliday created, it was cool not just because he thought of everything, but because he included everything. It was it was all the games in one game.
yeah, it's the metaverse, the power of the metaverse.
We can return to that because that's, of course, the interesting topic we'll probably be discussing on every kind of stream. That's kind of the trip. But this was just a thread. If you look up like Curio first Maximus, I'm sure you'll find it. But it's just a few things that we kind of recounted, so we can go to the next one. But like first art NFT on Ethereum, not the first quote NFT even in that gray zone. There's other projects, and yeah, another shout out to Adam McBride et al. For like the real interesting discovery, but it's not just enough to say it on Twitter. There's a lot more that goes on, and so that's really cool. And then the GIF, not going to take a side on that controversy, but what NFTs were images, and then to have the GIFs, the IPFS that we were talking about earlier, the NFT drop, the fine art, the hashtag clean Mona, and just the physical art. So it's just kind of like cool to see how all these different modes, and then also, well, what does that mean going forward? Is it a 2017 fan club? Not specifically. So then what does it mean to introduce community governance and some of the financial pieces and connections to other communities like Gary Vee's community or like games? So there's just like so many ways that go beyond these parts. First with ETH sale at Christie's, Sotheby's and Christie's in the same month. Just like there will be more, and there'll be new kinds of firsts as well for Curio.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of my
we
oh,
voted
go
for
ahead.
cards
Go
back
ahead.
when the rediscovery happened. The OpenSea, we had to set a fee for OpenSea, whether it was 0 or 5 or whatever. We had to do something, so people voted with their cards. That was new. We had never done that before.
Yeah, it's amazing. A few DAOs have popped up on on the discords as well, and so many ideas around that. I'm truly excited about the direction of where that's going. Like we literally we're gonna have so many groups of people that are gonna be autonomous making these things. I mean, anyone could just pop up and say, oh yeah, here's a DAO representing holders of this card or this set of cards or this artist cards. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
fan DAOs will be really interesting, and if they add significant community value, then you can opt in to be part of it, or just track it, or and some of them you might not be comfortable about how they do their practices, and you just pick the one that you're comfortable with. There's different levels of engagement based on your comfortability and what you're good at. Like you might be part of one over another. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, we want to set up
there's
like
some
guilds, right? So like
yeah.
in interest sectors. If you like marketing, I don't know, you can join like the Outreach Guild. If you want to develop games, there can be like DAP Guild or something. If you're an artist who wants to make fan art, there's like Mint Guild. Like this idea, and these are kind of self-organizing. And I mean, obviously, like we help, and there's a larger community. But we released there's like an Airtable forum, just like an example of how simple this can be. It's a forum. You put in who you are in the Discord and what you like and what you're interested in doing, and then that becomes a public directory. And that people have been doing that. We have this public directory. People say like, I want to work on this kind of thing, and I have 4 hours a week free time or whatever. And I know of one example where someone has looked at that form and then created a group DM off of it of people who are like-minded and said, hey, let's try working on something. In this case, it was merchandise.
There's one that I just thought of. What about like a games integration one? Or is that too specific? What do you think, Travis? Like games integration guild.
Yeah, probably a little specific. It would definitely branch out if there was enough games, that require that kind of over divide people. But I could definitely see like an integrations thing, right? It's almost like well, I guess it's outreach, right? It's like business development. You're like trying to say, hey, for being a rare mythical object in that game, we should reach out to them, put a proposal in their form. Maybe they're a DAO as well, right? We'll write up a proposal. We'll get it through the vote. We'll show up in their community. We'll help out. We'll contribute. Feels like outreach.
This comes up like in my day job / what I was doing right before this. These are the discussions that online communities, teams, relationships, projects are asking. Like, if someone has to go on a freelance website, is that a finance operation? Is that a graphic design department? Like, where's the value going to come from? Where are the taco equivalents going to come from? To use a universal currency, where does the value and where's the time? Where's the skill? How is it not going to fall between the cracks? How is it going to be aligned with the bigger
And
picture?
how do we pay people for doing that work too?
Yep. And so right now, it's hopeful that some people with a lot of just privilege have the opportunity to work on this question. I
Mm-hmm.
hope, because there are a lot of people who are being risen in the tide of crypto and NFT, and a little can go a long way when we're scaffolding using the tools that we're actually using.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the ethos of Curio back in the day was the idea that an artist that nobody knew about could make cards and get paid for that work. So we don't want a DAO that's built on, everyone who has enough money laying around that they can just go work for free and quit their job. And a lot of DAOs out there, unfortunately, they are kind of like just people with privilege of volunteering.
I love the
and
idea too.
and they'll have an expectation of reward, right? They'll say like, oh man, if I help build this thing in a couple of months, the token will.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah, like
say
maybe
that.
it's like an investment opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge incentive. Like, hey, if we we get to this artist to a level of success, like this undiscovered artist, and be able to share the
Mhm.
share that within the community, because
But
that's
what do you do
yeah.
time, right? Like only people who can kind of engage in that sort of speculation are people who have the resources to engage in that speculation. So I mean, there's a coordinate that we're getting set up that is set up, and we actually have an epoch running now with some people who are testing it out. It's important to me that this is something that anybody can be involved in. That you don't have to, be working for free.
Yeah, there's always been these middlemen that have tried to extract value out of artists, and they always take more than what the artist gets. And then like, like when you do this on the blockchain, it's like it's transparent. You can't, like, everyone knows that if you're screwing over an artist, like it's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting. So it's built into the system now that
Yeah,
that
where that
these
money comes
tools.
from,
Yeah,
people know. Yeah, so like also like if we are paying people, the source of those funds should be a value add. They should be activities that add value. They should not be because we tax the artists, and that's why we
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
We don't have any fee on the artists.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that the and it's so clear. It's like where you extract value now on the blockchain becomes so
Hmm.
transparent. It's like, oh
Hmm.
man, this is like the best tools for the artists they've ever had. And yeah, and it's like anyone can be an artist to some degree. These tools are hyper accessible, and in some cases, there's a case to be made like, well, like, is skill and craft still should that still be rewarded, or should we go beyond our means to reward that even more so, or should we be rewarding these more conceptual artists? So I think there's like, there'll be different, having a one size fits all for like all types of artists, and like, there's gonna be so many types. Like, I know some artists that literally work on one piece every year, and it's like, and it, and sometimes it's a big work of art, sometimes it's real small, sometimes it's just conceptual. In my studio, you know, I've rented it for 3 years. I've done the Marisol Series 7, which you can see on marisolvengas.com. But then I've only done a handful of pieces, like very few. And, I've come from a background of doing these major series, like very big series. And I'm like, now I'm going to try focusing more on experience rather than quantity or quality. I'm just like, I don't care about those. I'm just going to try this just experiential stuff and just see what it's like for myself, just to splatter paint and sprinkle glitter all over stuff and just get messy and weird, and just see where that goes. And so I'm also this just brings up this concern that I have of like, are we just reinforcing the artist just to get more dollars, or just get, like, is that their end game? Are we perpetuating this concept of like, let's just get them more money, that's what they want anyway? It's like that there it almost dilutes the conceptual value of the work of being like a JPEG in a square on a rectangle website. So I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to the
Extra,
artist process, and just don't want to dilute them in that
yeah.
regard as well.
And when the community does more work around it, it should be a value add. Like it's that experience thing, right? It's the access. It's how NFTs are different from regular art
Okay, if I
that we can
can,
take as a community and add to them. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So just one thought on that, like when you were talking about all the kinds of funding of projects, like before and after, and different, just non-comparable types of art, some that leave a physical trace or infinite, and some that don't. So that reminds me of the research funding world, which is kind of, again, my regular life and was in 2017 as well. And so just how there are changes in science funding with open science and DeSci and everything that will be cool that maybe we'll explore more in the future too. But there's all these changes with art fi, D art fi or something like that.
Art by, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, how can we make a DAO with a reservoir, and people, doesn't need to be every person liking every art piece. That's not the case in the real world, nor does every person like every video game or movie. So connecting people who care, having reservoirs and funding systems, and just there's just like new combinations for artists being humans and building
Yeah.
skills, because it's not just about the pen on the paper. it's a grind at times, and there's the whole commercialization and copyright. Now you're talking about all these blockchain affordances. This isn't something that a person can figure out full stack alone. So to find the teams and the mentors that are helpful in this wild Web3 area, that's as important as an artist can get, more so than just a one-time $1,000 sale, which is awesome. But that's not a long-term strategy for most people in most of the world.
Yep. You need a community. You need people you can go to work on an idea together. I see it also as like creating playgrounds. Because these should be fun spaces. These should be creative spaces.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been encouraging artists to make NFTs for a couple of years now, before it even like really took off. And locally, I'll explain something I do on the ground. I was bringing artists in, showing them, teaching them how to use crypto and how to accept it. I mean, I've done that for years, over 10 years now, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, the newer delegated proof of stake chains, the fee-less transactions and such like that. But in minting NFTs, it was so nuanced and so difficult. And I found myself, spending hours doing that. And then they would still need support. I'm like, oh man, I went beyond my means offering support. And then for whatever reason, it doesn't even work out. And so I'm like, once again, the technology goes back to something more than they can accept. Right. So what I did, I started training some really bright former students of mine and other individuals in my community, and said, let me show you how to mint NFTs. And I'll like give you a couple bucks, in tokens. So you have some tokens to mint these things. Please go help these other artists out. And it's not a paid gig, but see if they'll give you something.
It's an ecosystem where that education is powerful, right? We
Exactly.
did we did just in Curio because people didn't know what Gnosis was, and any kind of future DAO will probably involve Gnosis. So we're like, well, let's just create a Gnosis. We just created a Gnosis group together, and they raised funds and bought a card and whatever, just as an experiment. And now all of those people, they are now walking around with that knowledge in their heads. And they don't have to, they're not experts. They did it once, right? But the next time they go look it up and it's like, wait, how did I do that? I don't remember. They're going to look it up and they're going to be like, I remember this UI. I remember that vocabulary term. I remember this looks familiar. And that means they can now help others. Education's power.
Yes, the education was so important. So those artists, they became their own banks in the crypto vein. Just basically distributing the education. So I showed one person, they showed a bunch of artists, and if they need support, they can go back and help out that individual. And that's how I got my friend Frisk to mint his own NFTs. I don't have any part of that. I'm like, I don't want to be your bank. Like you're you mint them, you pick the price, whatever you want to do. Like, go at it. I trust your judgment. I trust the judgment of the individual that taught him how to do it as well. So I think.
And if they make a mistake, they learn something, and they do it again.
Yes, exactly. And that's hard because I want to
don't try to be perfect.
I want to control.
Like when Curio came out, it was not perfect. We launched with a pretty basic website, and like our goal was, hey, this should be easy enough that anybody can use. The first website was not easy enough that anybody could use. NFTs in general are still not easy enough that anybody could use. But we did our best and we improved on it. We released like 3 different websites over the run. And you just kind of like, you get something out there, you learn like, oh wow, we didn't realize this. And then you iterate and you try it again and you try it again. And it playful experimentation is the term and the feeling we should have, not serious financial product that has to be perfectly created and formulated. That's no fun. You don't learn anything, because while you're writing it all down on paper and trying to figure it out on paper, you're not actually seeing if it works in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely.
What were you gonna say there, Max?
No, just to summarize that educational experience, and I pivoted because I'm like, I did have the time to be able to onboard all these people, and then I'm like so busy with other activities. I want to be able to scale that as well. So if anyone has ideas out there how to incentivize more individuals to teach artists how to use these things, just direct message me or let me know. But that's something I'm focusing on. I've been focusing primarily on crypto education in the last 10 plus years of being involved in crypto communities. So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And yeah.
Yeah, anybody who wants to do anything with that sounds like an outreach guild to me.
Oh yeah. Well, sign me up. I'm down. Let's do it.
In one of our other projects, the Active Inference Lab, the 3 units are like education, communication, and tools. And there's probably other big 3 or 2 or 4 breakdowns that can be made, but can't help but always see these circumstances on roughly similar lines. And so just like interesting, just how the skills that come up outside of the art world come up in the art world, and expressivity and the ability to connect with other people. There's so many pieces to it. Let's go to this last slide, I guess, and then we can also have more time for questions if people are asking in the live chat. And this is art stream number 1. Anyone can do an art stream, by the way, but we can also do one whenever people want one. There can be Curio people in it. Like if there's a time that works for another Curio person or just any participant, or just someone external who we want to like have on and just talk with our community, that could be pretty chill. So yeah, any questions? Otherwise we'll talk about these slides and just, yeah. So, okay. Documentary. When?
There's also like a Twitter Spaces potentially. We could loop in Twitter Spaces in some way, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't used it that much, but I can see that when crypto people do it, that sometimes a lot of people join. So whatever technical backend makes sense. I mean, the visual part is kind of cool because I feel like we can show art and look at art, but I know what you're saying. So, who wrote the documentary? Question, or what does this mean?
Oh yeah, I posed that question. When's a Curio documentary going to happen? And yeah, just curious. I mean, it's come up so many times. I think in the last week, I had like 5 random people like, "Oh, I would watch a documentary about that." And there's just so many extreme personalities, and just it feels chaotic. And behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on than any of us really care to discuss publicly. And yeah, I just would love to see a documentary, or just yeah, it would be epic. That's all I gotta say to that.
Realistically,
I think
there's enough information, I believe, from audio and text to do a Ken Burns style, slow pans on the archive website, a little bit of voiceover here, a little bit of robot voice there, a few clips from live streams. I think it could be done. Some 3D modeling made by some of our community members.
I think and the story that's interesting, right? The thing about this that we find so fascinating, it's playing out in a ton of other communities as well. So it'd be cool to even something larger, like the OG NFT, documentary, and just get all the old school people in. I remember going to this art conference in New York called Rare AF, and I think 2018. And even though NFTs weren't a big thing yet, there were like a handful of projects there hanging out, and all of those people's stories are intertwined with ours and very interesting.
Agreed. Okay, so here was one question from the chat. Also, thanks for the correction. You can show tweets and things on Twitter Spaces from Uwais Patel. So, okay, I guess you can.
We also could have the live stream and the Twitter Spaces at the same time, maybe, like it's just piped in. It's just a way of getting Q&A.
Whoever, loves the broadcasting side, and then there'll be other people who just want to slide into a video chat and tell a story or talk about their art, which would be awesome, because having kind of like at least a location where people know that they can have the ear or the eye of the Curio community, it helps us raise up cool art, cool projects, calls for participation. There's just a lot of things that can be helpful from that kind of a conversation. So here was a question from the live chat, and then we can talk for maybe 20 more minutes about whatever. So Do you think you'd auction the physicals like Gary V did? I'll let you answer, Max, then I'll answer on this theme of just
Oh man,
auctions. What do they
yeah,
mean? And what about the physicals?
I've had some. I mean, yeah, I think that's I the end game for my physical pieces for sure. I've acquired them back from my collectors over the years, and so yeah, I have them in my possession. I've been offered an insane amount of money for them already, and so just I'm sure Daniel, you might have had some questions around those as well. But I'm like, I don't think I can part with them yet. I've secured them in a location that is, um, you know, secured and insured them in a location where I'm not too concerned about them at this moment. Um,
You can't just
I
put them on a hardware wallet.
yeah, just not a very expensive hardware wallet. No, I mean, yeah, I've had a community member has helped me with making cases for these as well, making them, secure and safe. And anyway, I I want to auction them. I don't think it's the right time yet. I feel like it'd be short sighted to sell them. I mean, most of the offers are. People are thinking they're going to be longer term holds, or they have some institution they're going to sell them to. They have some other. They'd probably just auction them. Actually, now I think about it. But yeah, I want to auction them. I want to do something fun with them, something more engaging. I've even I've put them. I put hashes of those original files of them on the blockchain on IPFS, and then embedded those hashes into the physical pieces so that they're one of ones. So I put them on a blockchain. Like for sure, when you get them, you can scan them, and you can scan them with the NFC chip that's locked on them. Can't get the NFC chip out of them either. In some way where, you know, for sure they're very very
That's
unique.
very cool.
Yeah, curious what your thoughts are on those, Daniel. Like, what do you have any ideas about what to do with those, or?
You only get to sell the one of one once. So now is definitely not the time to do it. But you know, it made me think of one recent experience actually that I'm sure, well, I'm not a career artist. I actually have not made money off of art other than Curio, which is why, a lot of the other artists have been to art school and have made a career and like, so it's a different world. But now that I've been dropped back into that game several times, it's occurred, and probably many more that I don't know about, with people pretending to be the artist's identity, or people wanting to buy a physical of a different piece and getting personal information. And just, it's easy to impersonate people on all the digital platforms that aren't really strongly grounded in a cryptographic identity. And it's just a really wild world because there's people in a time hurry, and the people who are learning about some of the technical details, and the message looks like it's from them, and it's just really amazing. And it just really has to be something that gets like figured out or supported by community standards, because it happens in the real art world, I'm sure, too, in different ways. And there's just all these components that we can try to set better standards for moving forward. But yeah.
And then what about would you consider auctioning
Oh,
them? If
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would, but I agree it would be more fun to do it in an interesting way, but not in the short term.
And in the short to medium term, I want to curate some art shows around originals with NFT works to interface with these traditional institutions and galleries. So I've had some loose offers around that, and waiting to basically solve. I mean, like top tier galleries. I'm not even joking. Like there's some incredible galleries that want to have our works in them. So waiting to hear back about dates and stuff. But I mean, as soon as the end of the month, I might be showing them somewhere. So yeah, I don't want to like promise anything, but keep everyone posted about that.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, for sure.
So the short version is you're both going to wait to auction them until after Curio Cards is a household name.
Yes.
It'd have to be in some households.
So like 3-4 months from now.
Exactly.
Yes, for sure. Oh man.
But this is the fun thing with art, we are looking back at history, but we're looking forward. Got the card 10, the future, and just people memeing on the internet and making remixes. So this is different media, and the 3D that we've seen is kind of a different media.
Well, the remix thing too. When you said earlier,
go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, when you said earlier, Daniel, about having artists on here, other artists on, and featuring them, I would love to have the remix artists on. I think it'd be a great place to start.
Great point.
Yes.
Frisk and several others who we know of. So I don't not list any other names we haven't said, because they should just come on, and like, if they want, it could be really cool.
Can I run an idea by you guys?
I've wanted to learn more about them. Yeah.
So I was just meeting with Frisk, my friend. He's actually a local in Chico. I've known him from the coffee shop for like 20 years or however long he's been here for. But he's an amazing designer. Like, and I know a lot of you have seen his work. And I was sitting with him, and I started thinking about this old art gallery, and I actually ran it in this room. So this room is part of my office up here in Chico. And I got this office. I was working on some kind of sensitive contracts that I couldn't work at. It was like one of the first big grown-up jobs. So I got this office, and at the same time, I started making typography. And so anyway, I was in here a lot alone working on this stuff, and I decided to make an art gallery out of this room that I'm sitting in. And it was really cool. I didn't have the bandwidth to curate it, and I also didn't have necessarily a budget to curate it either. And so I came up with this model. I'm going to run this model by you, and just want to get your feedback on how this could apply to this other bringing in guest artist idea. So what I did is I picked an artist and I said, show one piece, and then for a whole month, and we'll set up some art shows, and people can schedule time, they can come in and look at it. So I gave them a key. They could come in and use the space. And then at the end of the month, I asked them to pick another artist. And so then they picked another artist. So it's self-curating, and I'm like, just give the key to them. Like, they can come in whenever they want, and but have them, pick one piece out, and then we'll set up some times and have some private shows. So it was kind of extreme, because I'd done a lot of collective type of art shows where it's like, it's inclusive. Everyone can come. Whoever wants to come can show up. And I'm like, no, these are going to be private, exclusive. So I went to kind of the extreme of that. Instead of having all these different works of art by all these different, individuals, it was like one piece of art by one person. So experimenting with the idea, and it worked for about 6 months. And one of the artists that was selected ended up passing away from some health issues. And then I was like, I don't think I'm going to continue it. It was like, that's a good dedication to him as well. So that it hasn't been an art gallery since. So I was thinking about that idea and applying it to what I'm doing with, selecting the Curio Card guest artist. And right now there's one other one that's been working on his pieces, and he's a little more selective about his process. So he's taking a little bit longer. I was hoping to have them submit their pieces in parallel. So the Curio Card artist to interpret my works, I'm thinking about saying to them, hey, would you be interested in selecting the next artist as well, and just using their judgment as they have high standards of what art they want to see, and then giving them the same opportunity to remix the work. Anyway, I want to run that by you guys. The first time I brought it up, but yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, one thought is, like you mentioned, this trade-off of curation, which faces everything basically, and then the trade-off between basically being inclusive and being exclusive, which seem like they're going to be diametrically opposite. But then we can be radically inclusive with who we select, especially in a context of people who are kind of putting their work out there. And so the exclusivity and the knowing that there's only a limited amount, or that there's this like chain of integrity, that's what helps us include people who are worthy of being selected. How do you control the drift, or just spiraling, or kind of malicious paying it forward behavior? I mean, there has to be a real world where people care about the art. But yeah, seems like an interesting choice. I guess I just think about how things could get stymied.
Curation,
Yeah. What would
yeah,
happen? Yeah.
curation is a problem. Yeah, curation is a problem with no single clean solution. It's something we struggled with in 2017. It's something I struggled with as I continue to try to grow and expand Curio Cards back in the day, and even now with like the fan drops and artist drops, etc., the remixes. Either you are a gatekeeper and there is a group of people that are deciding what gets in and what doesn't, or you've opened it up and then you have all these weird game theory around collusion, and there is no clean solution to that. I think it's sort of like a expect that you'll make mistakes, and community focus matters. So the artists, if the artists are the ones making the decision, that's fine too, but they should be looking at the community. The question should be like, what does the community think will add value, or what do they want, or what are they looking to do? Because if you add some artwork and nobody likes it, then what was kind of the point, right? And a lot of times the community would be a great way to highlight somebody you didn't know about. So you're trying to get around that gatekeeper effect, right? You're trying to get around the idea of like, it's only people I know they're going to get in. If instead this community are like, they're just like bringing people and they're talking about people, I think it helps the discovery. You kind of want to look to the large, just there'll be manipulations. But see, it's a resource, though. It is absolutely a resource.
Although going to the literally they're called oracles, right? And finding out what the mythical community wants, many a decision has gone to that oracle. So especially for artists whose work, for example, might be controversial. I don't know how controversial my art specifically is, but art is tied up with the person and with the context and the usage of it, and that can go just way beyond the artist's intention, as if that even mattered. So these issues come into play. Like, it's a new tornado of,
that's why that usage matters. And it's like, yeah.
And so then what
I think when I say community, what I'm trying to get is context, right? It's what you're saying around context. What is the context of that artwork matters?
Okay, not sure because Travis is kind of lagging. But I agree. Did
I drop out? Sorry.
Yeah, you were lagging, but it's okay. Yes, the community is like the context matters for the art, and if a person acts on chain and off chain defensively, that's kind of modern integrity, we hope. And how will we deal with it when people do make mistakes and just beyond a simple flagrant mistake, things that people just disagree on? I mean, real people disagree in the real world, but now we're going to be able to sift through it and find out, and it's going to be another level. Let's just ask a few other questions from the live chat. Okay, someone asked, documentary would be awesome. Can we do Curio merch? So that's kind of interesting to ask now, because maybe we could even bring up like, what does it mean to use, for example, the Curio logo, which I've splattered the stream with? What about the individual artist's works? Now, what about making a remix? Is that reusing it? What if I don't like the remix as an artist? What if I really like it, but they're making money off of it? What does this all mean? We're not going to cover it in a few minutes, but like maybe Travis and then Max, how do we think about making merch, making remixes post Curio? What does that even mean?
If my audio is not great, maybe also Max can take more of a lead on it, because I think he knows what I know about the merch. There are people looking into that. I think it goes back to the context, right? So we have on the documentation on docs.curio.cards, we have the artists can put up what their licensing kind of terms are, because it is really important that the art is used in ways that respect. It's not the same as like CryptoPunks, where there's like a single artist. There are 7 different artists, and they all have different rights and wants and needs. And if you're doing anything, you should make sure that it's respecting that. I think that small groups of community members can kind of make a decision, and then as long as they honor the whole community, so like put it to a vote, right? make a proposal that everyone kind of votes on and agrees on, and you can say in the proposal, the artists agreed or the artists didn't agree, but we think it's cool anyway. And then like it goes to a vote, and it really how people respond to those proposals. I think we should start simple and grow from there.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I totally,
Travis. Yeah,
yeah, I
Max.
totally agree with that model. That's awesome. I'm super sensitive to licensing, and I'll tell you why. So I've been licensing fonts since 2012. I think, yeah, I mean, 100 million downloads and like a large percentages in the well, single digit, a large percentage of those end up being licenses. And I've had my creative works in positions where I fundamentally just disagree with the product or the political party or the values that they're trying to sell these products on. And it didn't think of me as being an issue at first, but over time, I realized I could vote with my intellectual property. So I'm super sensitive to that. For in most cases, I'm like, yeah, use it, do whatever you want with it. But I kind of disagree with other licenses from, I think Philippe does it and Robeck does it, where you're like, if you own this card, you can have these permissions and such. I just disagree because it'll end up in unusual use cases when you put it in front of a mass audience. And I've seen that. I've literally had, and I just want to say it really quickly. But in this one small town in Poland, this nationalist party was had selected an artist to put up this bizarre mural that is like not appropriate. It's about like, so I don't even want to get into it, but it was like something that this one individual had won this contest, and I'm like the reporter in the area is like, did you sanction this intellectual property to be used this way? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like this is crazy. And the act of me actually um, claiming that that shouldn't be used in that case had prevented them from that mural going forward. And yeah, so there's other things I could get into about that, but so I think it's acceptable to have the artist come up with their the artist should come up with their own way of how they want to license it, but having a group to be able to you know organize that and interface with people that want to make merch would be awesome. So I know like Philippe and Robex, it's like really easy. If you own it, you can kind of do whatever you want with it, so to speak. Creative Commons terms are very straightforward. So it'd be really fun to experiment around that and see where that goes. But I mean, I would love to have some super high quality shirts with like Marisol Vengas logo and some having some extra functionality or access. Just wearing it gives you access to some club, or I don't know. There's some fun things to think about. So yeah, I'm yeah, and I'll be supporting that DAO as it progresses for sure.
Cool. Pretty interesting. So maybe if anyone has a last question, otherwise, just like, what a fun time, Max and Travis. Thanks a lot. Because I mean, we talked about a ton. I'm just like looking at some of these notes. We talked about the history of Curio, just 101, part one of N. Some of the physicality of our art. So that's just a cool concordance. But I'm sure if we had any two artists or really any two people, there's always something fun to pull out with a juxtaposition of art and artists and perspective. So that's just kind of where maybe the art stream can go. We talked about anon and having identity. I mean, again, not a total discussion, but identity and pseudonym on the internet and in art. And then the technical part was really interesting, talking about Rhett's contributions and the way that influenced and was influenced by ERC20 precedent, ERC 721, ERC 1155. This is a link I posted by Shorish, Stevenson, and Zargum. So there's a lot of formal work happening with NFTs that's pretty interesting. Then engagement, NFTs, some of these domains that we're kind of exploring in, like social, project-based governance, DAOs, teams of teams, financial services, kinds we know, like escrow and fractionalization, kinds we don't know. Games, what does it mean for the games? First of Curio, all these different things that we were the first, and hopefully our community will continue to build on those things. The DAOs, some of the ethos, artisan success, just documentary, auctions, curio curation. So sorry for the long, boring recap while waiting for anyone else to answer live chats, but it's just like really awesome for a starting point, because a lot of those are things that people ask all the time. They're things I'm still curious about, and I'm supposedly knowing. So I don't know. Any last thoughts, either Max or Travis, and then we'll see if anyone else has any questions.
Yeah, my last thought was like holy shit, we could be making some like art on this show too. Like that was a major conclusion. I've done some public access shows. I helped set up a local public access station up here in Chico, and I've accessed this incredible equipment. So I'm like, I'm gonna do a show. I just took all the equipment. I'm like, it doesn't matter what it's gonna look like, and just used. I just love those intrinsic properties, and you guys probably will hear me talk about this for a while. But just basically, we could do some live collab art and maybe get some viewers to come in and contribute to that in some way. And anyway, just throwing it out there, something to think about. I love the experimental live art stuff. Huge proponent of it. I've done it for many years. Yeah, live content is awesome. We should have fun with it. Anyway, that's my last 2 words. Travis?
Yeah, that sounds fun. You do live artwork and then
Oh shit, you cut out.
the end
Start again, Travis.
airdrop. There's some sorry everybody, I'm joining this in my car, so I have bad internet.
Start again though. So live art and then continue.
I just think you could make something live on stream and then just airdrop it on all card holders.
That's cool, and it reminds me of talking like with my parents and friends about NFTs. And then I was saying like, well, if we were live streaming and there was a QR code with like that frame image and then the BTC or ETH block, for example. So certainly that QR code was made after that block was mined. And then if there were an NFT that were sent out and you said, okay, I'm sending out the NFT, then you couldn't have sent, you had to have said that before you sent it, kind of. So then we could do some time bounding and then just show people like, we're using this global clock and this art project to show who was there at a certain place online. So there's just like there, and then that with the community art angle, the coffee shop, and like I would always draw with people at coffee shops too, with one friend, or we'd go in with a group. So it's just like to combine that with airdrop or different kinds of participation. It's a awesome time for art. So I hope, even though I know that the market / whatever is going to fluctuate and the FUD is going to be unreal and there's going to be so many narratives, I hope some people can connect and make some good collaborations and projects, and hopefully Curio can help that happen.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome, man. Let's talk about this idea in detail next time. I think as a brainstorming session, I think we'll get some good ideas of what a live collab or live art making can look like, because there's some, yeah, I think it's, once again, just makes these themes accessible and, gets it out there, gets the community involved a little more as well.
Yeah, a lot to say on that, but that's a perfect amount of time. So again, Travis, Max, thanks a ton. Everybody's welcome to join. So somebody will invent some Curio parting words. But until then, see you later.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, peace out.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.